Some of our signals have gotten a little crossed here this morning, but maybe only we would know. It's interesting with this reading. It's probably true with many of them, but it's, to me, very true about this one. I thought yesterday when I was reading it, where would I be if Swamiji, Swami Kriyananda, had not interpreted this for me? How could I read this Bible reading, particularly the Gita reading is a little more clear, and make any sense of it? It seems so obvious. So many of us now have been hearing these same readings over and over many times for many years, but it's very complicated, to certainly anybody who's a newcomer, but in some ways, because none of us are quite there yet, that is, free of ego, it's very difficult. Swamiji says very clearly in this reading, he says, God tests the firmness of our faith, and he goes on to describe that the sword is the sword of discrimination. But then he says, what we're discriminating, what we're sorting out here is a struggle with our own attachment to all that is nearest and dearest to us. That's very hard. It's very hard all the way on the path. It's not simply you're traveling in India and you decide you'd rather find the safety of going home with your brother. And then Master says he was seeking familial warmth. But all that is nearest and dearest to us means not just people or things, but it means all of our habits, all of the ways we think about things in the world, all of our judgments, all of those moments when we're sure that we have an answer to something. It gets just more and more and more subtle. And for those of us who have really been on the path for a long time, or for those just stepping on, I'm not sure it matters, we are the devoted and dedicated ones, and we're looking. We're trying very hard to get this clear, and yet still the subtlety reigns. So Swamiji says here, he says, all that is nearest and dearest to us, humanly speaking. In other words, really that which has to do with our ego. And he says the war that we're raging, and these are his words, is the war against our ego. But the ego does what it does so incredibly well. It's so good at bringing Maya into our lives, at convincing us that what we see on the physical plane, where we find our security, what wealth means, what love means, all of this, we grow up where the vast majority of people in the world are not thinking spiritually, even for most of us, our own families. So we have been conditioned to looking for all of those safety nets in precisely the wrong place. And then there is our spiritual side, our soul reality, where the soul comes and says, I know about freedom. I am freedom. You are already free. You are secure. You are loved. But the path from here to there is a challenging one. One can't help but hold the image of mountain climbing here or hiking. You do a big, long hike. For anybody who's ever done this, you hike up and up. You make really good progress. You feel good about yourself, as you should, every step of the way. This is true in many ways in life, but the mountain is just such a beautiful image because the closer to the top you get often, the more challenging it is until you find yourself on what is called scree. You're on a very steep hill and it's covered with tiny little rocks that are secured to nothing, very hard to get a foothold. You take a step up or 2 steps up and you often slide down a little, sometimes on all fours. It's a steep climb and you've made it and it's been a great climb and you've done really well, but you have to keep paying attention. At no point can you think very much like with our lives. Okay, there, I've done it. Now I'm coming to service every Sunday, or I've taken Raja Yoga, or I'm living in community, or all of my friends are on the path. Really, that's all perfect. It's all along the way, but we cannot forget what Swamiji says very clearly to us. You're waging a war against the ego. The victory that we're all looking for, that demands the courage of our conviction, is victory over Maya. It's no small thing. I had a very interesting experience a couple of weeks ago that really brought me back to what I felt yesterday when I was reading this. I'm going to interrupt myself before I tell that story. Last night, I was moved to tears with this sense of gratitude for Swami Kriyananda, as I said, not just because he interpreted this Bible reading for us. That in and of itself would be great to make sense of this great avatar's words, but because Swami Kriyananda was both deeply attuned to his guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, every moment of his life from the time he met him, and he lived with that presence of God every moment. And then he took on this wonderful piece of work that was handed to him to show every one of us how to live this life. So even when we were near him and we couldn't at all get even close to the way he was living truth, he lived it for us. We were in that flow of energy, in that uplifted state of consciousness. And long before we could literally manifest, maybe even a little bit of it in our lives, we were absorbing it. And beyond mind, without a logical approach, we were, in fact, becoming it. It magnetized us. It drew us. He loved us. Impersonally, he loved everybody. But that love was there. So it was just natural. It's the soul's way of being. We are energy. We were drawn into that magnificent vortex of love and truth. And in ways that we didn't know at the time, and we probably don't know now, we were beginning this transformation from ego to soul. Lakshmi told a beautiful story this morning during the fire ceremony. She was talking about our family service yesterday. The family services are so inspiring. Here are these little 2- and 3-year-olds or 12-year-olds who are chanting the mantras, who are throwing rice and ghee into the fire, who are mesmerized by spiritual stories. They're up there doing energization exercises and yoga postures, sometimes being held up by their mothers or fathers, but it's precious. And Lakshmi said, when we were sitting around the fire, so we put a huge piece of plastic down up here, and we put the fire in the middle, trying to catch as many of the seeds of karma in the form of rice as we can. And all of the kids and the parents sit around the outside of the circle. And Lakshmi said that she noticed there was one little girl who was doing what she was supposed to be doing, but then Lakshmi saw that the more energy she brought to it, the more enthusiasm, the more uplifted energy, willingness, joy, the more the little girl did. No words, all beyond words, but that is exactly what happens and exactly what Swami Kriyananda did for us. So in ways that we couldn't always know, but somehow we didn't leave God's grace, he was showing us how to fight this battle. In every way, I've said it many times, his prayers, his chants, the colors he chose, the style of building, everything was harmonized to this, the highest vibration of God's will for us. And we were just drawn like this, just like that little girl was. What a blessing it is, because we need that at every step in this life. Swamiji's not here in his body, but we're still counting on the vibration that he too put into the ether and left for us that we can keep coming back to, because victory demands a lot of courage. Interestingly, he didn't need courage. Swamiji really didn't, because he was always moving with God's will. When you're moving right with God's will, it doesn't take courage to do that which is right or that which will take you further down your path. You know it, you feel it, you're in it. It may be hard, it may require a lot of energy, a lot of willingness, consciously doing that, but not necessarily courage, because what else would you do? And yet, it took Swamiji. Swamiji had many lifetimes of experience to get there. That's where we're headed. Fortunately, he left us that beautiful example, again, of how to fight this battle. I started to tell you about an experience that I had just a little bit ago. I got together with some friends, people who are very dear to me. You know, you meet certain people, they just walk right into your heart, you walk into theirs. The love is just there. It feels like for lifetimes you've been in love, not in romantic love, but in love. And yet, we got into a little, what I will call kerfuffle. It wasn't a big argument, but it was misunderstandings, misspeaking, many things. And I was with them for a day, and I kept trying to center myself. What was off? What was hurting my heart? Why couldn't I make it right? I did everything I could do. I searched my soul in that day. Is there anything I can apologize for? Let me apologize. Is there any way I can express love? Let me express love. And these are very great beings, so when we parted, none of us really felt the love was gone, but we were wrestling with it. It wasn't as natural and flowing and just vibrating right in tune. And I came home that night, and I was really working at this. Remember now, we're talking about how hard these struggles can be if we're going at it with mind, with logic, with ego. And the next morning, I woke up and I sat down and I really prayed. This really mattered to me. Of course, treating everybody well really matters, and I think it matters to both of us. And moving through this life from that place of the soul's perspective and not the egoic, I will say now, perspective, because it's subtle. You think you have nothing, that you're not trying to prove anything, that you're listening to God, that all you want to do is serve, and yet it's not right. So in what way, I was saying to myself, am I attached to an opinion, a thought, something I thought I had to teach or share? And it's small. It's not big, like I know best. But I said to the masters, help me with this. This needs to be clear. I need to transcend any aspect of ego here. And I haven't been able to do it. So you do it for me. I had a very long meditation that morning, very deep meditation. When I came out of it, my heart was so open. There was none of I knew what all the thoughts were. I knew what all of the points that I thought I could make, and all of that didn't disappear. But the love that had come in with this deep desire to resonate with the soul and not with the ego, it transcended everything, and I could sit down and share with my friends right from my heart. Here's the truth. Whatever I was thinking or needing or wanting, who cares? It's all just our perspective. But when this heart opens, when you find that love of God and for God, what else matters? Nothing matters. That's victory. But it doesn't come easy. It's not easy. I wish I could say it is. Swamiji writes this very interesting couple of paragraphs in his expanded explanation of this reading that I want to read to you, but I want to make sure that the feeling of what happened, of that, what feels like the smallest step from thinking about it to living it, from wanting to make something happen to opening your heart and asking God, which is really the end of the Gita reading today, whether it's dirt or gold, a clod of mud, I love that, the way Krishna says it, or a bar of good. It's all about God. It didn't matter what I thought should happen. Maybe some of it would have been good. I was probably not just saying all things that were stupid, but doesn't matter. Wasn't working. The ego doesn't work. The heart, the soul, that reality, that fine vibration. That's our goal. Swamiji makes an interesting point here about the challenge of this, which really resonated with me. And I'll tell you why first. There's a story that many of us know about somebody at Ananda who was, in fact, in the moment of passing. I wasn't there and I didn't know her, but I think this is the story of a woman whose name was Happy. But when Happy was trying to leave the body, and she had several of her friends around her, she looked at them and she said to them, "This is hard." Dying very consciously. She wanted to die into the soul. Like last week's reading, she wanted to surrender the ego up. You remember, in surrender lies victory, but not surrender like defeat, not surrender like losing, surrender like winning the whole big game. And she said, with all of that consciousness, all of that awareness, that wisdom, and apparently she was a very joyful being, "This is very hard. You have to help me." And I often wondered, I've watched so many people pass, what is it that's so hard? What happens? Because, of course, I don't remember. I think I've done it many times, but I don't remember. But, like, what is it? And then another story came to mind last night. And that is when I was with my husband, Barry Rosen. Many of you have heard me talk about him. In the last hours of his life, Barry was a big man. He was like 6'2", but big energy, big presence. He had been on steroids for months, so he had even gained like an extra 50 pounds, and he was struggling the whole time. He did not want to leave. He was just pulling at everything. We literally had to restrain him. Trying to get out of bed, it would have been terrible. And I was looking at him, and I kept just gently speaking to him. Barry, it's okay. Let go. You can go. And then I looked at my friend who was with me, and I said, I just have the feeling that Barry has what would be the equivalent of a splinter stuck in one vritti, and it's holding him, and he's wrestling with it. It's hard. It's hard to let go of all ego. There he was. I don't know where Barry was going next, but he was a great soul, a great being. He did a lot of good in this life. He was certainly not going to any lower plane of being. But until we can clear ourselves of all egoic attachment, we have to be so conscious, keep our awareness so high, constantly be asking for help. In some way, that's where the courage of our conviction, our duty to move towards this unitive reality rather than living in the duality of what's going on, because it grabs us. He was stuck. Barry was just stuck. He couldn't let go of it, and I knew it was nothing huge. I thought, wow, that's what makes it hard. When there's anything left in those vrittis that hasn't been neutralized or uplifted or let free, yeah, it's very hard to let go. Swamiji writes, the devotee, he writes this after an explanation of the line that says, he that findeth his life shall lose it, and he that loseth his life for my sake shall find it. Now, we know, of course, that what Jesus is talking about is exactly the ego. He that finds the life that he wants and clings to it, he's going to lose his spiritual reality. And he that lets go of his ego will find truth, love, expansion, ultimately God, which is what we're all looking for in every moment, even when we're making little mistakes. We're not making mistakes to be bad or to hurt people. We genuinely think that's going to bring us something, or the people we love something. That's how we all operate. We're the good guys here. So we are well on our way. But here's what Swamiji says about it. Swamiji says, the devotee in deep inner communion with God attains a state where he realizes that the next step is to offer his very ego into the ocean of bliss. Thus alone is it possible to attain union with God. It is a great challenge. These are Swamiji's words. The entire spiritual path is a training for this moment. All the service, the devotion, the discrimination, the humility, the chanting, the meditation. Swamiji says, this is all training for that moment when we can truly say to God, I am yours completely. I know that. I remember that. I give myself completely to you. I no longer have any attachment to the clod of mud or the bar of gold. I see you everywhere in everything. And as long as we're turning in that direction, as long as we're making progress, as long as we're willing to fight the battle, which doesn't simply mean go on alone, like almost the theme song of Ananda that Swamiji wrote. When you know that your heart's calling you in a direction, go on alone. It also means fight the battle with sorry, I can't think of the word, let me just say it a different way. Fight the battle by being willing to look in as much as out, to look at yourself and ask yourself, what can I do in this situation that will take me closer to God? That may not be winning the whole battle, but it's winning a battle. Everything we do that gets us closer to God, letting go of this little attachment, of that little attachment, of this way where we're convinced that we're right, of this desire, that desire. Every battle that we win takes us further in the direction of winning the big battle. Ego consciousness, no longer soul consciousness now. I want to end this morning by reading something that I know many of you heard. I actually was going to read it today, and then Asha put it out to our Google group yesterday. I bet a lot of you watched it, but it's a piece of a talk that Sagar just gave up at Ananda Village last week. Sagar is a monk up at the village. He started on the path with Ananda in India, working very closely with a man whose name is Nayaswami Jaya, who was living in India at the time. Now he goes back and forth. So the monks were working and living with Nayaswami Jaya. And Sagar, as he says, I don't know how old he is. He is not very old. But he started this part of his talk by saying, this happened when I was young. But I'm sure he meant even young spiritually, because he does have wisdom about him. He wanted to read to the village people at a Sunday service a letter that Jaya sent to him. He said, I wrote Jaya a note, I sent him a note saying, I'm leaving. Leaving meaning the monastery, leaving the path, in fact. And he said, I don't remember, it was some silly thing. He said, I can't think of any reason that's not silly that anybody would want to leave Ananda. But he said, so I wrote Jaya a note that said, I'm leaving. And here was Jaya's response to him. And Sagar said it came even with letterhead. Jaya had made a letterhead. The letterhead said, the Yogananda School of Life, Graduate Division. And underneath it, it said Office of Admissions. And here's the letter. Remember what we're talking about now. We're talking about victory demands the courage of conviction. Victory, the war against the ego, demands that we hang in there, that we are living as much with conscious awareness of this as we can every moment of our lives. Dear Brahmachari Sagar, upon review of your request for termination of your present class assignments and possible application to the School of Hard Knocks, please allow me to bring to your attention the relevant articles of admission to which all students agree upon entrance. I call to your attention Section 7, Terms of Withdrawal, which says, entry into the Yogananda School of Life is irrevocable. Students, upon entering the school, forfeit all rights of withdrawal. They are permitted to remain in school for as long as needed to attain their degree, but withdrawal is not permitted until graduation. As you know, some students take 1, 2, or even 3 days of Brahma. Days of Brahma are a very long time. I meant to look up how long that means, but many, many thousands, if not millions of years, I forget. It's a long time. So Jaya wrote, many students take 1, 2, or 3 days of Brahma to receive their degree, but serious students are encouraged to proceed at a more rapid rate. Regarding your possible request for transfer to the School of Hard Knocks, I advise against it. Students make their own choices, but in review of your transcript, I notice you are making good progress towards your degree and suspect such a transfer will only lead to delay. Be advised that the School of Hard Knocks is exceedingly crowded at the moment. And although the dean will undoubtedly make space for you, the dean, former students of my acquaintance report very slow progress and living conditions are said to be substandard. If I remember correctly, I believe you once took classes in that part of the campus, and I call this to your attention. As a counselor for the school and as someone with regard for your corrector, I encourage your steady progress. I remind you of my availability by appointment should you wish to review your application in more detail. I'll offer whatever assistance is at my command. Please feel free to contact me at your convenience. Now that, my friends, is a beautiful, beautiful, what a gift as somebody's about to leave and as somebody's headed back into what Jaya called the School of Hard Knocks. It's where the vast majority, all of us are living, but we know, we see the door, the way out. That is our goal. We can never give up. We should be present in as many moments of our life as we can be with a lightness of heart. I did not beat myself up when I had that issue going on with my friends. I didn't. I just said there has got to be a more conscious, higher, uplifted way through this. There always is. And that's where we're all headed. So just remember, we don't want to be in the School of Hard Knocks. And furthermore, we can't get out of here anyway. God bless you all.
Every morning when I greet the sun, when I move forth through crowded ways, in my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. When I laugh, oh, and when I cry with pain, when my best friends misunderstand, in my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. Dear God, my God, I am Thine for eternity. Dear God, my God, I am Thine eternally. Though my path lead me over desert sands, though it take me through bitter storms, in my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. When I'm working and when in earned repose, let come victory or low defeat. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. Dear God, my God, thine eternally.
Children of God, your time of trial has ended. See where the dawn irradiates the night. Soon all your tears will rise like dew to the sun. Sorrows will turn to joy, your griefs to delight. Children, rejoice, for lo, the kingdom of God comes in full splendor. It needs but your sight. Children of God, your time of trial has ended. See where the dawn irradiates the night. Soon all your tears will rise like dew to the sun. Sorrows will turn to joy, your griefs to delight. Children, rejoice, for lo, the kingdom of God comes in full splendor. It needs but your sight.